This
Oh, there it's recording, yeah.
Hi, everyone. This is Andrea Dupree, and I'm here with Emily Rapp Black. And we're so excited that she's joining us today. I've got to turn off my email. Sorry, that was unprofessional. She's joining us today to throw us a line and help us through this time of quarantine, writing in the time of quarantine.
Love at the time of Corona. Yeah.
How are things going in California?
Fine. We are on lockdown, so quarantine for reals. Kids are home from school. Yeah. So learning how to, be an elementary school teacher, not good at it. We go out for walks. It's been great. I mean, in some ways, I think, as I've said to you before, like social isolation is very good for writers, and it's sort of our natural feeling. But I definitely am feeling a little bit cooped up. But it's also an opportunity to make progress in things. I am also doing a collaborative essay with a friend of mine, Lisa Glatt, another writer, and that's been a real lifeline. So we have like one word that we want to deal with, and she'll write a paragraph, and then she'll kick it over to me. And so my commitment is once a day, at least one paragraph. So we've already finished 2 of the essays and sent them out. They're short, they're like 1,800 words, and they're more like prose, poem, lyric essays. And that's been so great. I mean, who knows what will happen with them, but just the process of committing to even just a paragraph and then finishing something is really like psychologically satisfying in a time when there's not a lot of psychologically satisfying things going on. So that's been really great. So I guess, have a partner if you have one, or find one. Yeah.
So you guys do one paragraph. Do you do it by paragraph?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like, for example, we did one about breath. That was the word. And she started with an essay about, it came from this idea that she's been through chemo, she had cancer, her mother died of cancer. I lost my son, I lost a leg. And we're thinking like, okay, so those are sort of catastrophic events in some sense. And now we're all sort of feeling the same panic that a lot of people who have non-normative bodies have felt their whole life. And so how does that look? So she would start with a paragraph, just like a brief scene, and then she'd kick it to me and I would read it, and whatever came out, whatever made me think, like whatever image popped up, I would write that out. It's been awesome. I mean, it's one of the, I love collaborating with her. We do sort of screenplays and TV pilots that we try to sell and never do. But it's like writing with her is just, it's like joy. It's like creative joy. So if you have somebody that you like to write with, or you think you might want to, it's a really good exercise. Like everyone can do a paragraph, right? Even if it's a bad paragraph, she's, or I always say like, oh, can I mess with it a little? And she's like, yeah. And then we just like, we edit each other as we're going. And then we read it aloud on the phone, not on Zoom. We do enough Zooming in my job. And then we send it out somewhere. So that's been fun.
Amazing. You're kind of stunningly productive during this time.
Well, the first week I was like, yeah, I've gotten better. I think it's the new normal, right?
Right.
I think having those kinds of like creative outlets without being super structured about it, like I wrote the last paragraph. I usually go to bed at like 8. As soon as it's dark, I'm like, it's time for bed. And I wrote the last one yesterday at like 10:30. And working with, because I had other things to do and I just didn't get to it. So I think sort of letting go of some of the scheduling, but also just having certain commitments can be really helpful. I found it to be helpful. Like that's one thing that I think is like the best part of my day is like my Peloton bike and my paragraph for Lisa. Yeah.
All of you with the Pelotons are looking like geniuses right now.
They're going to rake it in. The thing is, it's like now when you go on a live ride, which I don't normally do, but it's like 20,000 people like high-fiving you on the leaderboard. It's great. It's a really great outlet, but there's also a lot of like free content for movement. And I think, of course, that's something that I've always been into, but even now, even more so, I'm just like, yeah, got to move. Yeah.
Definitely. And what a lot of people don't probably realize as you're talking about this is you're also homeschooling in a way a 6-year-old, which is more than a full-time job.
She's like, you're not a good teacher. I'm like, I know. I don't know math. I can't do this basic math. Like she's in a Montessori school and she's like, can you draw this animal? And I'm like, no. Like I'm pretty hopeless, but they have like, they have some guidelines for us. And yeah, the homeschooling thing, I think everyone is really struggling with that, especially if you have multiple income streams like I do. But it's also just like, I think I read a really good article actually about don't try to teach your classes the way you would normally teach your classes. Like don't think you're going to be as productive as you normally would be. And that of course is a nice feeling. At first it's kind of awkward, but then it's like, yeah, whatever you can do that day is enough. So that's I'm trying to keep to that too. Yeah.
And you're going to be teaching a virtual Lit Fest.
I am.
Workshop, and you've done it live several times, like, I don't know, half a dozen times maybe. I don't
4, 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Charlie's 6, she was a baby, so 4, right. I think. Yeah.
I remember you used to have a timer go off for nursing breaks.
My mom would be like, here's your child. It's like so hungry. Yeah. So I'm going to teach, it's the master class. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that'll work really well in Zoom. I actually teach right now. I teach a class for writers who are writing specifically about child loss. And we do that on Zoom. We do it once a week. Oh. So I'm getting used to it. I'm a kind of a techno moron, but I'm getting used to it. And I think it is a nice platform. I mean, it works, right? It's not like Skype where it's all weird connections or whatever.
Totally. It's the best we can do for where we are right now. So you're gonna throw us a line in a second, but I wanted to start this whole little, inspirational part, reading some of one of my favorite authors, The Still of the Turning World, by Emily Rapp Black, for those of you who don't know. And I'm just going to read a short little passage that I feel is germane.
Okay.
I'd been disconnected from my writing life for years, and during that time I'd been preaching and writing classes about the importance of establishing objective distance from difficult life stories before trying to render them on the page. Or, and I quote myself here, otherwise those stories can be heavy loads for the reader to lift. Writing, I prattled on, should not be therapeutic. It's not therapy, it's art. Now I had my own monstrous load to haul around, and although I still believe that it couldn't be all doomsday and sadness in the writing, even if that was how the heart felt, I found my advice naive at best, but borderline self-righteous and wholly uneducated in the vicissitudes of grief. In those first hellish weeks, I had to write. That was all there was. That was living.
I can't even remember writing that, but it sounds pretty good.
It's throwing you a line right now, isn't it, Emily?
Yeah. No, I mean, I have to say, like, I have a lot of things that aren't writing related that I do, but I've found, like I said, that paragraph exchange, it's the same feeling. It's like, oh, this is keeping us afloat, right? And I think, people are really, everybody, it's so strange because everyone's having kind of a similar experience at one time and we're able to share it with each other. Like the Spanish flu, there, you could send a letter in 1918 and it would get there like a year later. Like no one knew it was happening. And now we can sort of watch like Italians singing on their balconies and flash mobs. And I mean, it's pretty amazing. So I think that is one way that the writers can really connect with each other is, I know there's been like virtual book groups that have started. Like I do my online class that I did way before Corona became this big problem. We've been doing that for like a couple of months. And it's like, we know each other through other avenues, but it's just like a magical, like it can still be a really magical thing.
Absolutely.
So I think it's like, now's the time, if you're a writer, to sort of like, if you want to start a virtual book group, you're going to have like people lining up at Zoom or whatever, because people are anxious to talk to someone else about literature. And it's a good time for readers,
I agree. And speaking of which, you were gonna feature something. So let's do
today. Don't be afraid. It's big, but it's really good. So this is my favorite novel, War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, written in the 19th century. It's gone through several translations. This latest one, I think, is probably the best one. I think it came out 4 or 5 years ago. So when I was young and often in the hospital, my godfather, who's a Russian literature professor, used to read this to me in Russian. And I had no idea what he was saying, but it was kind of amazing to listen to. It's his like specialty novel. He knows it inside and out. And I've read it. I think I read it once a year if I can. And what I love about it is that it's sprawling, messy, breaks a lot of rules. It includes all of the things about life. It's not one of those novels where it's one that you really have to sink into. So it's very immersive in that sense. So you have to work to read it in a way. It's not like reading something that doesn't engage your brain. Also, I always tell students, like, you need to be able to say what your piece is about, whether it's 5 sentences or 500 pages in a single sentence. Like, this is a novel about, etc., or this is a memoir about, etc. This is a novel about war and peace. And that's a title too. Yeah. So it's also about a lot of other things, about love, and it's about deception. It's about animals. It's about farming. It's about politics, but more or less it's about like war and peace and all the things that are related to that. So I think that's, if you rereading favorite novels, I think is a really good idea right now, because you'll know it and it's sort of like comforting. It's like watching a Law and Order episode you've seen 10 times. And you're like, oh, I know what happens at the end. They're going to get that guy. So I think that's a really helpful thing, just to keep reading, and also limiting like time on the internet for news. So yeah, I think it's a balance. I think we're all going to have to find a balance between like stuff we would do in our normal lives, stuff that we would do when we were excited to stay at home. Remember that? And also, being as productive as possible without pressure. Yeah.
Well, good. I appreciate that. Remembering War and Peace at a time like this, who wouldn't benefit from it?
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, you can skip the stonemasons chapter, but the rest of it is just stunning. It's like, it's really a work of art. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Emily. And we're sending you good health and
Yeah.
sanity with your homebound status.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to teach the workshop. It'll be fun. We'll have a lot of fun and we'll learn a lot and it'll be great.
We're excited too. Thank you, and
Thank
good
you.
health and wellness, and we'll see you soon.